Today we're going to be replacing the transmission fluid and filter on a 2015 Dodge Durango RT. In regard to the things you're going to need here, first get some transmission fluid. It's going to be this Mopar 8 to 9 speed ATF. Don't put an ATF 4 in here because that's not the correct fluid. Then we're also going to need to get this transmission pan because it has an integrated filter. Unfortunately, if you're going to get the Mopar part, it does not come with a filter that you can replace. You have to replace the entire pan. Dorman does make an aftermarket part that does actually have the pan and the filter separate, so you could replace that separately in the future if you want. But in our case here, we're going to use the Mopar part. In addition, it's going to give you all new bolts and drain plug here. And what you're going to need here is you're going to need an 8mm hex for the drain, and you're going to need a T40 Torx bit here for all the bolts around the pan. In addition, you're going to need to get one of these fluid pumps that's going to go inside here, and this will allow you to pump the fluid out of this quart into our transmission. And you're also going to need a torque wrench over there to make sure we torque these to spec, as there is a specific sequence that we need to do on that as well, and I'll show you that here in a little bit. And we also need a clean drain pan. And just make sure that drain pan is clean because we want to measure how much fluid we took out of this so we can make sure we put that same amount back in. To get started here, we'll jack the vehicle up. If you're not familiar with the jack points on here, over there's the pinch weld, and then in the back, and I'll give you a picture of this. There's a convenient spot there that Dodge has that you can put one of those jack stands underneath there. I really do like these Esco jack stands. If you're not familiar with those, check out the link above. I go into a lot more detail on those, but you know, those won't damage that versus some of the traditional ones. How that sits in there, it could potentially scuff it up. Those fit there perfectly. In addition, up front, you're going to probably need one of these weld adapters that goes under your pinch weld. Put it on your jack and we'll jack it up. And just make sure when you're doing this that we keep the transmission pan as level as we can. Not necessarily the vehicle. You'll see how that transmission sits underneath there. You want to make sure that is level so when we're draining and filling it, we're able to put the right amount of fluid back in there. Before we remove that drain plug, we'll first just crack this fill plug loose. And again, this is just going to be that 8mm. And do not remove this or open it up any more than that right now, otherwise you get a rush of fluid out of there. Now that we have our pan level here, we're going to remove this 10mm hex here and we're going to drain it. Some models do have a skid plate here. If you have one of those, just remove that first. As you can see here, we do not have that, so we'll go ahead and loosen up that drain plug and make sure you have your pan ready here. Then we'll let that drain out here for a little bit just to make sure we can get all that fluid in this pan here. If you just remove that plug right now, you're going to get a rush of that to come out. So we'll wait till it gets to a little slower trickle, then we'll remove the plug the rest of the way. Alright, then go ahead and remove your plug, and we'll let that drain a little bit longer here. Then when that slows up a little bit, we'll put the plug back in here just to stop it from leaking all over the place. The rest of that fluid will come out when we remove the pan, so just tighten that up. Now we're ready to remove the pan, and you just got these T40s around here, and I believe there's 13 of them. So we'll go ahead and we'll slowly loosen them up. Very important, do not remove them all the way. We'll leave a couple of these in here so we can have some of that transmission fluid still drain out in this pan. Once it again gets to a slow trickle, we'll remove the pan all the way. When you get over here to the sides, and likewise over there, you're not going to be able to get that extension in there like I did on all the ones on the sides there. What you need to do here is, you can sometimes get away with using one of these swivels, but the problem here is as you see on mine, this is just a gear wrench. It's too long, so it's still going to be hitting the frame piece over here. So what you're going to need to do is get something very similar to this, one of these hex keys like this, except it's actually the Torx on the end, and this will give you the leverage to get in there and get those loosened up. Over here on this back side, I'm just going to go ahead and remove these all the way because they're kind of a pain here. On this back one here, my little hex key's not getting in there all the way fully seated on that bolt, so I'm going to use this little gear wrench thing. And I just got a T40 on here. This looks like it'll fit up in here perfectly. Alright, so now that we got all those loosened up, we'll slowly start removing a couple of these. We'll let it drain back here, so we'll probably remove all of these and just keep a couple of these on over here. We'll let the remaining of this pan drain, then we'll remove all of them and remove the pan. And before you remove these last two, just make sure you're holding the pan, and when it comes off, we're going to gently rotate it and get the rest of that fluid in our drain pan here. Now that we got the pan removed, first just double check you don't have any excessive metal shavings and chunks in there. Ours looks fine. And just compare it to your new one, it is the Mopar part, so it is identical. The only difference that I've noticed on this newer model or this newer part number that they have is they don't put this magnet over here on this right side. I don't know why, but you can see various negative reviews on this is missing. You could probably remove one of those and clean it off and stick it in here, but the problem is when you start bending these up, you risk breaking that tab. So I'm not going to mess with it. I'm going to leave it as is. Then the other thing to verify on your new filter is just verify that that ring is there, and make sure you remove the old one off of the transmission. You don't have it stuck on the transmission side, so we can feel it's still there, so we're good. And you are going to notice it does have the gasket already installed as well. So as long as everything checks out here, we'll go ahead and install it on the vehicle. Before you install the pan, just make sure you take a clean shop towel here and wipe away any excess fluid or debris or anything on this mating surface. After that looks good, we'll go ahead and we'll raise our pan up there. Then we are going to be using our new bolts that did come with our pan. Just make sure when you're tightening these, there's a specific torque sequence that you need to do in regard to how you tighten these. I'll show you that here in a little bit, but we're first just going to get this up there and just gently snug these up just to get the pan sitting in place. And the only other call out when you're raising this up, just make sure that little neck that's over here on your pan and your filter, it goes fully seated inside of that hole right there. Alright, so we got those two in there and it's sitting in place. We'll go ahead and we'll install the rest of them again. We're not going to tighten these up yet. Alright, so after you get all those bolts in there gently tightened up, now we're going to torque this to spec. And the torque on these is going to be 89 inch-pounds. And the sequence is going to be, you're going to start over here and this is going to be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13 in that order. So it's basically a star pattern, but just make sure you do that. It might be a little bit difficult to get your torque wrench over here, but we'll do the best we can here. And I'm going to do 2 passes, so if you notice, I'm not 100% tightening it down to 89 inch-pounds this first round. Alright, so there was the first pass, so we'll go ahead and we'll do the final 89 inch-pounds here. So after you get all those tightened down to 89 inch-pounds, it doesn't hurt to just go through here and just double check. Just do it in a row just to verify you didn't miss any. Alright, so then once you verify those are all tight, just verify everything looks good here, then we'll go up top there and we'll begin the process of filling this up. Moving on to filling this up with transmission fluid, the first thing we're going to do is we're going to measure how much came out, and we're going to try to put that same amount back in with our new fluid over there. I'm going to be dumping this in this emptied out old oil container just to get a little bit more accurate reading. If I'm looking at that level over there, it looks like it's right at about 5 quarts there, but we'll put it in here just to verify. Get my ratchet out of there that I accidentally dropped earlier. Alright, so it does look like we are right at that 5 quarts, and I ended up buying a 6-quart pack over there, so we'll just make sure we use 5 of these. And what you're going to do, if you've never used these before, you're going to have to make sure you get one of these, and it's just a fluid pump, and it's just going to get tightened down like this. We'll go up underneath the vehicle, remove the fill plug, and we'll slowly start pumping the fluid in the transmission. So we'll go ahead and we'll remove this fill plug, and again, it's just going to be that 8mm hex. And our new filter and pan did come with a new one of these, so we'll use it. Just pay attention to that little gasket on there. Make sure this comes off the old one and your new one still has it. Then we'll take our fluid and we'll start pumping it in there. And one comment here real quick, I'm going to be fast forwarding some of this because this takes a minute to get this all pumped in here. We're going to keep pumping it in here until we get a little bit of a trickle to come out of our fill hole. Once we get to that point, we'll cap this, then we'll start the process to check the oil where we got to start the vehicle and shift it through a couple gears. But just keep pumping the quarts in here until you get to a little trickle come out of here. So there's 1 quart, so we'll open up another quart. So there's 2 quarts. Alright, so we got about 3 quarts in there, so we're going to put our fill cap back on, and then we're going to go in the vehicle, then we're going to start the process to get the oil level correct in here. And what this is going to do, when you start the motor and you cycle through a couple of the gears, the pump's going to take some of that fluid and probably fill up the torque converter in other areas of the transmission. It'll give us a little bit more room in here to put the last couple quarts in here. And you don't need to tighten that up all the way, just gently hand tighten it like I did there. And I typically like to do that when I go inside the vehicle and start this process because I don't want any transmission fluid inadvertently coming out of there. Now we're going to go ahead and start the vehicle here. Now, according to Dodge, they want you to do that first part with the engine running. I typically don't like to do that, to run it dry in there. So I typically put a couple quarts in there. I'll come in here, I'll start the vehicle, go down there and fill up a little bit more. Then I'll do the final process there once it trickles out the next time, where we get it into the gears and rev it up, etc. there. So we'll just go ahead and start the vehicle, go back underneath there, and we'll fill it up a little bit more. And one other note, when you're doing this, you need to make sure the transmission temperature is between 86 and 122 degrees Fahrenheit. And Dodge does have a trans temp gauge on this car here. If yours doesn't, just make sure you get a scanner. All right, so open up our plug again. And we'll continue the process here of pumping fluid in there until it starts to trickle out. So it's starting to come out, so we'll put our plug in. And I did about 4 quarts there, so we have about 1 more quart to go. So we'll go back up in the vehicle and we'll start the process of shifting it through the gears. So again, just gently tighten that up. All right, so now that we're back in the vehicle, make sure the back tires are off the ground if you have rear drive. If you have the all-wheel, obviously pay attention to make sure the all-wheel drive is turned off and you have the front off as well. But I just have a rear drive on this vehicle, so I have some wheel chocks up front. With the engine started, again, monitor your trans temp. Just make sure in that range of 86 to 122. Then we're going to press the brakes, and we're going to put it in reverse, and we're going to hold it there for 5 seconds. Switching into neutral for 5 seconds. And we're going to put in drive for a couple seconds here. And we're going to make sure we disable the traction control. Then we're going to slowly release the brake and let the transmission cycle all the way up to 2nd gear. Then apply the brakes to a complete stop. Put it in neutral, let it sit there for 5 seconds. And we're going to raise the engine RPM up to 2,000 RPM. Hold it there for about 5 seconds. Then go ahead and put it in park. We'll go down there and check the fluid again. So go ahead and remove our fill plug again. And we can see that there's no fluid come out, so we'll begin the process again. And this is our last quart here, so we should be able to get all of this in here before it starts coming out. Alright, so as you can see there, it's slowly trickling out, so we'll go ahead and we'll tighten up our plug. Then we'll just gently snug this up. Then we'll go shut the vehicle off because it is getting pretty warm under here with this exhaust. Then we'll go ahead and torque this to spec here. Alright, so then we'll just wipe up any remaining fluid we have down here. Then just do one final look down here. Just make sure your gasket and the pan and everything looks good and you don't have any leaks. Then you're done down here. Alright, so as you can see, this is a very easy job that you can do yourself at home and save yourself roughly around $1,000 versus having a dealer do this. The biggest thing I would say, just make sure you monitor how much fluid came out, put that same amount back in, because that's the sure bet way to know that you actually put the right amount back in. And obviously that's within reason. You know the vehicle's history and it's never been serviced incorrectly before and it was overfilled or underfilled at that time. But, this vehicle has been in my family for, roughly 10 years and it's never been serviced, and it's around that 95,000 miles. So we know it's never been serviced. So the 5 that came out was in there from the factory. So we simply put the 5 back in. We did the fill process that Dodge wanted to do with cycling through the gears just to kind of show you how to do it. But we were pretty confident by just doing the 5, that was all we needed to put in there. Then the one last thing to wrap up here, I know Dodge really doesn't have a service recommendation for this 8-speed transmission in this Durango. I don't know if I'd follow that because I've seen my share of Chrysler and Dodge transmissions blowing up at 120,000 miles because the filters are clogged up with metal shavings. So if I was in your shoes, I would definitely do this. I don't know if I'd follow that recommendation from Dodge, especially because the manufacturer that makes this 8-9-speed transmission fluid says it's roughly around 75 to 100,000 miles. It should be serviced. So I don't know where the disconnect between the manufacturer and the fluid. But if I were you, if it was my vehicle, I would go ahead and for sure replace it. All right, so hopefully this helped you out. If it did, please give me the thumbs up. If you're interested in more content like this, please hit that subscribe. But again, I hope this helped you out, and thanks for watching.